Small disclaimer at the beginning of this video is kind of complex and it was kind of hard for me to write up, so if anything doesn't make sense to you, let me know in the comment section below and I'll correct myself later. This is in post that I'm adding this. I just want you guys to know that I'm still getting used to doing these more complicated commentaries and I need your guys' feedback so I can get better at this. I'm not perfect, I'm borderline awful. Hey there, this is the One Boom, and what takes more skill, a simplistic or complex shooter? I'll explain to you guys what both of those are and my opinion on what actually does take more skill. Now, first of all, I really don't want to start a flame war in the comments, but if you have to do it, make sure you keep a fire extinguisher next to your sensitive feelings if you don't like having your opinion bashed. I'm sorry, that's what I do here. Not really, this is a new thing for me. Also, there's a very spooky, scary thunderstorm outside my house, and this could be my last living testament. So son and or daughter, if you're hearing this in the future, make sure you always remember one thing. Wipe backwards. It will honestly save you so much trouble. Anyway, moving on, that's gross. I want to talk about a simplistic shooter before I start talking about my opinions on complex shooters and everything. A simplistic shooter, I think, has been affiliated with taking more skill due to its resemblance to a more traditional sport. And of course, by traditional sports, I mean football, basketball, soccer, and tennis, and all that stuff. And yes, I called it soccer, I'm white, get over it. And the reason I think these games remind people of these traditional sports is because the more simplistic maps, everyone using the same gear, everyone being on an equal playing field, and a very, very simplistic objective. And obviously the less things you can do, the less things people have to worry about, and the more you can just focus on the rudimentary gameplay. Also, another reason I think simplistic shooters actually do have a leg up over more complex ones is when there's less weapons, in smaller maps it's easier to balance it, and the game comes out more finished with not a lot of overpowered gear and weaponry. This is kind of going to turn into a Battlefield versus Counter-Strike video, and I don't mean it to. It's just that's kind of both games on the opposite side of the spectrum. You have Counter-Strike and you have Battlefield. One very simplistic competitive game and one very chaotic complex game. One trying to simulate real combat and the other one trying to simulate an actual sport. Of course, Battlefield being more of a combat simulator and Counter-Strike trying to be more of an esport. And the main thing about these complex games, and it's actually kind of hard to talk about because it's complex, is there's a lot more things to worry about. Which walls come down, which walls don't, which angled grip or foregrip is going to work better for this gun on this map. Should I use the muzzle brake or the compensator? These are things that people that play Battlefield think about a lot. Not only is your attention getting pulled in 12 different ways at once, you have to be able to deal with each individual problem out of the 12 very well, otherwise you're constantly failing. And that's just the game's core mechanics such as weapons and maps. Whereas the actual meta of how players play and what flags to grab and not to grab, what routes to take and not to take, are constantly going through a Battlefield player's mind. And it's a simple matter, in my opinion, of what actually makes a first-person shooter take more skill is how much brain power does it take up while you're playing, and especially playing and trying to do well. Obviously, it kind of is up to us how much brain power we're taking up when playing a video game, but if you're trying to do well in Battlefield, you're going to be using a lot more brain power than someone trying to do well in Counter-Strike, and that's a simple fact. So Counter-Strike fans, I hope you have that flamethrower to put out that sick burn I just dropped on your ass. But hey, it's not about what game takes more skill. This is one thing I really want to talk about. Although I do think the more things you have to think about in a game requires more skill, the more things you have to counter requires more skill, the more things you have to micromanage does take more skill, and the simpler it is does not make it more skill based, but at the same time it's not about making sure you're playing the game that takes the most skill. I mean, honestly, did you look up when you wanted to buy a first person shooter, did you look up which one makes me look more skillful and more clever? Because if that's the reason you're playing Battlefield or Counter-Strike, please stop now, turn in your bags and go home. For instance, I enjoy Call of Duty as a whole, even though it's considered, in my eyes, to be a very easygoing game that doesn't take too much skill to master. And in games like Counter-Strike, I understand there's a meta to it. I understand there's all these ins and outs of the gameplay that take months and maybe even years to perfect, but it doesn't take more skill than Battlefield or Call of Duty, just in the sense that it's pulling your attention to 2 to 3 to 4 things other than 10 to 12 to 20 things. Of course, I don't play any sort of first-person shooter to make sure I have the most skill-based game on my shelf. I just want to make sure that I'm having fun and enjoying myself. But when it comes down to what types of games take more skill from the player, I think it's the more complex games such as Battlefield or Arma, or other combat simulators, or things that try to more at least realistically simulate combat. I do not think Battlefield's realistic, but it's definitely more realistic than a game like Counter-Strike, and you definitely have a lot more freedom. So, in conclusion, in the world of first-person shooters that are also competitive, this does not go to free roam games like GTA or anything. Those are just silly, to be honest. They're fun, but they're silly. They're not competitive. When we come into games like Battlefield or Halo or COD, which one takes more skill to you? Which one takes the most amount of skill? In my opinion, it's the one that makes you think about the most amount of things. But what do you think makes a game take more skill? Does it have to be simpler or more complex? If you're going to counter my opinion in the comment section below, feel free. Start a flame war if you must, but make sure you have a good point, because otherwise I don't think a lot of people are going to argue with you if you just say, Battlefield sucks, Counter-Strike's God. Good, God, I love it. So good, so good. No one talks like that. I try way too hard to be funny. So if you guys enjoyed this topic, or even the video by the grace of God, leave me a like and a good comment down below, because I live for your guys' validation, and whoever keeps disliking each one of my videos, please stop. I keep crying myself to sleep and people in my household are worried. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Feel free to start a flame war in the comment section below. I don't care, I don't read that shit anyway. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you when I see ya. And goodbye! Goodbye! It won't let me hit the stop button. I keep trying, but oh, there it is. Okay. Goodbye!